Hey everybody, what up? Scuff D here, and if you're just tuning in, this is a beginner video here where we're discussing the not the bloodthirst, the rage and the berserk mechanic. It's so easy for me to get those mixed up because they're all thematically similar, and they're all roughly tied into the world eaters, but they all do different things. So, what I've been doing here is I've been just kind of throwing together a deck with as many bloodthirst. Sorry, this is bloodthirst. This is berserk and rage, with as many berserk and rage cards as possible to try to highlight the mechanic. So, if you're wondering, it's not exclusive to the World Eaters, these mechanics. However, they're heavily prevalent in the World Eaters faction. They do appear on other cards, primarily some demons. There's a couple cards with rage, and I believe the Iron Warriors has one. There's been some event-specific warlords that have had rage. So it is amongst the other legions. It's not legion-specific like Perfection necessarily. However, you're going to see the majority of it here in the World Eaters cards. So I've got a few more cards just to kind of flush out the experience. Let's do some general healing. Let's do a little bit of damagey damage. Sure, Monument to Corn. We don't ever get to play with that. Let's throw that out there. Just throwing as many cards out there that have got those two crazy mechanics as possible. I don't know if we're going to necessarily see it here in the neutrals that you can include in your deck. When I say demons, there are summonable demons in the game that are non-collectible that can actually pay that off. None of the demons here that we're looking at. By the way, some of this artwork is nice. These are new artwork for some of these cards here. Yeah, I think that's going to be just about it. So let's just go ahead and include some neutral staples. I hate to throw so many legendaries into it to highlight and show it off, but it gives me a little bit more time, ideally through the course of a game. And Sabotage, you know, that's always a good card to go into. Take a quick look. Yeah, alright. Well, we're going to play ourselves against an easy bot here just to kind of demonstrate the game. Wrapped up my last event run for this event. I might actually do one more to see if we can bring ourselves back up into the top 5, but that's for another time in another video. Practice AI. So, Rage is basically an ability that triggers when the card takes damage. Each time it takes damage. Now, if it takes 5 damage from one source, that Rage is only going to trigger one time. If it takes 1 damage and then the same source deals another 1 damage, there are some cards that deal like 1 damage to 3 random targets, and if it deals 1 damage and then 1 damage, that rage mechanic will trigger each time it's taken a damage. In addition to that, actually, you know what, I'm not going to go ahead and attack as many times as possible, because if I rush it, you won't be able to see everything. So we're going to hold off on, normally we use Karn as much as possible just to quick face it up, but I'm using his passive ability because he's got an ability that deals 1 random damage to a random unit, which might include my own units. However, looks like they're throwing some bodies out here, so let's try to get rid of some of these bodies. So, for instance, Argus Braun, now he's a legendary. He's one of the nice, I want to say closer, but he's a big beefy guy. He's got rage, double the attack of this troop. Now, that includes any bonuses that you've stacked on that troop. So if he's got a 4-6 normally, but you've put a sweep and advance on him, making him a 7-6, and you attack him, he then becomes a 14-6 after taking that damage. Let's go ahead and take Lork Squad here. Now, Lork Squad, they've received some new art here, but their ability is basically rage. Deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So in the event that Karn is attacking, and that's his little additional rage there, if in the event that that comes back and hits my guy, then that damage, that will trigger them to push out some damage onto their guys somewhere down the road. Hidden Strength, for instance, here gives +1/+1 to adjacent troops each time that takes damage. So not a bad vehicle to have. Let's go ahead and put Argus Brond out there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. So right off the bat, he's going to deal 1 additional damage to the opponent's Warlord. It's very basic. It's very straightforward. For attacking, I get an additional bonus or benefit. So this is a bot, obviously. They're just jamming me. Now jam triggers in the game. There was some issues initially. It triggers prior to the activation of Rage now. So when he jammed that target, it negated the ability of the Rage. So that's why the additional damage didn't deal out. Well, while we're playing with it, let's go ahead, throw this guy out here, and let's talk about this is what Rage does. He takes a damage, boom, now he's an 8/5. Karn's going to do a little bit here. Now he's going to take another damage. Now he's a 16/4. And he's going to, now, if I give myself some damage on this unit here, that's going to make him a 17/5. And if he takes damage, then he's a 34. It just goes on and on and on. Now, what is Berserk? A lot of these guys have got these X's here, these double-cross swords. Berserk. Berserk means that they must attack, or not must act every turn. Regardless of how powerful he is, if there's a wall that's going to kill him, I've got to act with him. I don't have a choice. What I do have a choice with, though, really quick, let's go ahead and throw, because we're just being silly, let's go ahead and throw this guy down. And then let's go ahead and pump him up here. He's taking 4 damage. He's buffing these guys up to 5/7s. Bam, bam. Oh, there you go. There's that random damage. That's going to wrap up the game. Now, I'm going to go 1 turn more just to show you. I'm going to make sure that you're very clear as far as, oh, that is indeed how it works. Oh, I can't. I should have gone with him to have it. Okay, all right. Well, there you go. That, in fact, is a good demonstration of Berserk. So there you go. So you've seen Rage, you've seen Berserk, you've actually kind of seen Bloodthirst with Karn, although I want to go into Bloodthirst a little bit later because that's kind of across a few different factions, and there's some very different uses in terms of how you use Bloodthirst. So we'll go into Bloodthirst at a later date. But that's Rage, and that is Rage and Berserk and Bloodthirst. God, I've been playing the game for almost a year and I still can't get those straight sometimes. So how do you deal with it? That's kind of the next part of this discussion. How do you deal with the mechanic of Rage? Well, the easiest way to deal with it is not damaging those cards. But that's really hard to do, especially in World Eaters decks who are throwing attacks at you, damaging themselves. Sometimes they'll play tactics from hand, like Strike and Fade, to deal 1 damage to their own troop to gain that benefit. So you can't fully rely on that strategy. The other way is destroy. Straight out destroy cards. Cards such as Outflank. Let's just go into, let's go into the collection and let's just take a look. All cards. Cards like Outflank, that straight destroy an enemy troop, as opposed to dealing damage, will override or bypass Rage. Rage only triggers when a card takes damage, not when it is targeted or acted on. So if you destroy a card, like if they had cast Perfection's Flight on my Argus Brond, instead of damaging him, it would straight destroy him. He would gain no benefit, and then on top of that, I'd lose the troop. So that keeps cards like this, just about every faction. I believe right now there's now 2 factions that don't have a destroy card, Alpha Legion and Raven Guard. They've got some other tricks that they rely upon specifically, rather than straight outright destroying. But basically every other faction has a card that can destroy troops to some degree. Some have limitations, some are conditional, but they do have those, and those do work. Neutral factions do not have access to destroy cards. So if you want to play as Ornitov or Latara or Ingathil or Mandragorax right now, who are the neutral warlords, or Caleb Decima or Caliber Hall, who are the Mechanicum. Those are neutral faction warlords. They do not have access to destroy cards, although the neutral factions do have access to a lot of neutral high damage cards. But that's not going to help you against Rage. However, a neutral card that goes in every deck, or that can go in every deck, I should say, and that the neutral cards do have access to, you saw it in my hand, Sabotage. I talked about this in the Perfection deck. I'm probably going to be bringing this up in just about every video. Jam a troop. Jam is very specific. Cancel all card abilities and active effects. So that means not only any bonuses that a card has received. For instance, my 34 attack Argus Brawn reverts back to his basic 4 attack. In addition to that, he loses permanently the Berserk and the Rage feature that he had. That's just gone. He now just straightly becomes a 4. I think he had 4 health remaining, so he'd be a 4/4. Now, jamming in itself straight gets rid, just ignores that rage. So you can destroy a troop, you can ignore a troop, you can jam a troop, and if you're lucky enough, or you have the card collection that you've increased over the course of time, you can do one extra thing with those troops, and it's a little bit limited. You can Ambassador Melgator them, basically bounce them back to your opponent's hand. It just delays their effect on the table for a turn. However, it does return it Astartes or infantry to hand. Now, that's not going to work on any vehicles or structures that have got rage. But that's still pretty effective, and most of the cards that people are going to be playing that have rage that they're going to rely upon, Wraith and Argus Brawn especially, are both susceptible to Ambassador Melgator. They're susceptible to destruction outright, they're susceptible to jamming, and they're susceptible to being bounced. So there's ways to deal with those, and those all can be included in every deck. Melgator is a neutral card. He's a legendary, but he's a very good legendary. Jam is a neutral card, can go in every deck, and like I said, just about every faction has access to some degree of destruction. On top of that, you may want to basically just kind of time your attacks or your turn. If you see a card and you look at its rage ability, because every rage ability is not the same. It just simply, they have a rage and then that triggers an ability. That's important to note. You take a look at what that card's rage ability is, and maybe you might want to attack it with one card, your Warlord, for instance, per se, and then it triggers its rage ability, and then you attack it with one of your troops to finish it off, if that's possible. So, like for the instance with Argus Brawn, he's a 4/6. It's a rough thing to do, but you could take the 4 to the face with your Warlord, drop him to a 4 health. He shoots up to an 8 attack. However, you follow up with, a Chariot of the Gods tactic or a 4 attack troop to finish him off. And then technically, while he gained his benefit and his boost health, your opponent never got to use it. So that's more of a matter of timing of play in terms of how to handle it and address it. Let's talk about Berserk. Berserk is actually not something that you can, you can jam Berserk. But when I say how do you deal with Berserk, that's really more of a problem as a player who has that card on the table with Berserk. As you saw, I was limited. I could not end my turn. I had to take that action. If I've got troops who have Berserk on the table, I have to act with them. Now, as I mentioned, I don't think there's any troops currently who have Berserk and who have abilities. When I say abilities, I mean abilities that cost energy, like Rotau. However, if Rotau had Berserk, rather than attacking with it, I could technically just use his 1 energy ability, keep him in stealth, keep him on the table, and then that would override the Berserk feature. But most of the time, you're going to have to attack with those guys. And you can time out how you attack if you want to keep them on the table a little bit longer. But normally, it's just kind of the kickback, if you were, for having a card that has that built-in power. You've got a card who's got a crazy power, but you've got to do something with him. You can't sit with him. You can't have him, sit back there and get stronger and stronger and stronger. He's going to get stronger, but that's because he's taking damage, because you have to do something with him. You can stun a card with Berserk. they will not be able to do anything. They'll be stunned. Stun overrides that. That's normally going to be triggered by your opponent. However, in the event that you had a card that you wanted to use and stun yourself, you certainly can. Angron, who is probably the most notorious Berserk card, is a warlord who has Berserk. He has no choice. He has to act. He cannot fight the butcher's nails. So he's got to do something every turn. So when you are playing as Angron, and I do not have him in my collection, he is one of four cards. Four cards remaining. He is one of the 4 cards. He's the only Primarch I don't have. But when you're playing with him, you really time your attacking to make the most of his ability and make the best of it. And if your opponent is smart or they're lucky, they've got a bunch of frontline troops, there's nothing that you can really do about it as Angron except attack, though you have no choice. You could take your choice of the weakest frontline troop, but if they've got 3 of Ogryns sitting up there, you have no choice. You got to go out one of those Ogryns. You're going to eat it, and it's not going to be pretty. But that is Berserk. That's the trade-off. On the trade-off side, Angron is almost continuously a 3 attack, and when he converts to his demon form, he gets even crazier. And as a world eater, having access to that world eater card pool, he's got a lot of just high quick damage. So that's a pretty good trade-off. So anyways, that's Berserk, that's Rage. You've seen a little bit of Bloodthirst, but like I said, we'll go into that at a later date. I hope that explains a little bit for you. I hope you get some understanding as far as some ideas and ways to get around it. And why did I put some healing in there? Well, first off, because Karn drops health like a champ, but also as a nice little benefit, if you've got that Argus Brawn and he's taking damage and he's getting crazy, you can heal him and add more health to him so he can continue to take damage, so he can continue to get crazy. Little tricks like that. Strike and Fade deals 1 damage, but it doesn't have to be to your opponent's troops. You can do that on your own troop if it's got Rage, if you want to pump up Argus Brawn, or sometimes what you often see is you'll see somebody with Wraith on the table. You do a double tap of Karn or double tap of Strike and Fade to finish off his 2 health, and you get a free Wraith's Berserker, or basically a Wraith's Berserker for 1 energy. Okay, these guys used to be a 5/5s, by the way. I remember when, and Wraith I think used to be a 4/2 if I remember correctly. Good times, buddy. All right, that's it. That's what I got for you. Next, we'll probably take a look here at, let's just take a look at the factions. We'll probably look at the poison mechanic. I don't believe that's something that's covered in the tutorial. It's a very basic feature. The first 4 legions, the debut legions of the game, rather, I should say. But we will take a look at that next. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and keep playing legions. All right, bye.